to be showing you some wonders in electronics and the magic of puppetry. And as I look out over the audience tonight, I see a lot of happy faces, faces full of love. And I just hope you'll give that love back to our three presenters this evening. So our first act needs really no introduction. Oh, it's Myra. And presenting a little thing called My Word. Take it away, Myra.
So I thought I'd do something a little bit different tonight because the feedback I've got in previous times has that you felt a bit rushed and a bit pressured, that I wasn't getting through my slides and there was a bit too much information. So I'm going for something a little bit different, a little bit more interactive, and so hopefully you might find this a little bit interesting. So like these kind of images you might think are something in the future. It's not really accessible, like this is kind of Hollywood nonsense, this is clearly fake. But I just wanted to kind of introduce something that proves that this is actually much closer to reality than you might think. There's some nice young boys from MIT have developed something that allows a Microsoft Kinect device to speak to any computer. So normally you'd have to plug this into an Xbox, but actually what they've developed is a browser plugin that lets you connect it to a web browser. So that the images that you saw of people kind of browsing web pages with their hands is actually possible today. So what they've built is on top of a piece of third-party software, which is a driver. Can I get a volunteer to come and stand on this marker? Thank you. I don't want to stand in front of it. The driver is kind of like if you had a new printer and you plugged it in, you'd need a piece of software that lets the device speak to the computer. So what they've built is built on top of this, which is actually a driver. And you can see here that it's using the camera. And I think the way the Kinect works is it's got two cameras, it builds up a 3D image, and this is showing you a kind of heat sensor of what's closer to the camera and what's further away. So it's got depth sensing, that's the important thing. And the library that these boys from MIT have built is called Depth.js because it's about like building up a 3D model rather than a 2D model. So that is the piece of software that they've built it on, and then what they've built is a Safari and a Chrome plugin. If I could get another volunteer to come and stand here. One of you. Yeah, put them up so much. If you can stand here and like face
Everything else is stuff.
If you could, like, so, here we are. Take a few steps back, you're a lot taller than I am. Come forward a bit. Come forward. Right, okay, so here you can see how the device is, like the blue circle is saying that's the kind of primary person on screen. And it can map to hands, and like it can do the outline of your body. Where a green dot is appearing is that it recognises that you've got fingers, so that's how it does gesture control. So you can do kind of wiping and panning and all the rest of it. So this is the browser plugin that they've built. It's taking information from the other piece of software and then mapping it in here and then putting more information in as well. So this is being passed to the browser. And then, thank you, that's very good. And then, so what they've done with it is built software that shows like how you can control a web page with this. So here he's got his hand just up on the screen, like he's kind of opening carousels and like panning carousels. And here he's showing how you can like scroll a whole page by doing a certain kind of gesture. Like this is scrolling up and down a selection of list items, and opening it is opening another page by like clicking a link. And then I think that was kind of going back and forward, and then you can scroll the whole page as well. So that's what they've built, which is pretty amazing because up until recently, this kind of hardware cost millions in MIT labs. And actually, this thing is 80 quid and it's here now, so that is the future.
Nicely played. I love your Earth minutes to write down a few comments if you haven't written them already. And we'll set up the next act.
The musical instrument. Some dance.
I'm going to do something called the shadowy past.
Okay, so following on from the very high-tech, impressive presentation we had, I've done something very low-tech and a bit primary school for you. So the shadowy past, basically trying to do a shadow puppet show and a year review of 2011. So I've taken some of the moments that stand out for me from this year ahead and cut them up. So what happened in 2011? We moved into a new building. Along came all the people from Head. Yay, new building. We worked hard. Sometimes we walked, sometimes we took trains. Obviously a short train, this one. Sometimes we took planes. Sometimes we missed planes. And that hard work continued to pay off. Following on from the Beamer successes of 2010, we got recognition from the Webbies and the NMAs. And we got the top 100 apps in Stuff magazine, but that was just the beginning of the press success. A lot of hard work went into the digital consumer debt set, which is a really interesting diagram. You should go and see the one that actually makes more sense than that, which hit the news. Many papers reported it, many people enjoyed reading it. So much so that we made TV. There's Paul talking on TV about how exciting the deficit was. Then that continued in the press with a wonderful 2-page spread from our beloved Myrid in .NET magazine, which talked about responsive design. Very worth a read if you haven't seen it yet. Obviously, a good example of that is our new website, which launched this year. So that was work-wise. Related, but in personal lives, we had graduations from Dan in April. Yay! We had our first ever head engagement. Obviously, love was in the air because we had 2 weddings this year. So we had Julia and Andrew not marrying each other, but obviously they're beloved partners. More happy couples. Dan had a baby boy. And Paul planted the seed for one. 2 new additions also in the kitchen were, of course, Jeremy the mouse and our new AEG refrigerator. And when the dragon of unusability attacks, Dan's baby comes back, pushes this extremely useful pedal, which fights opens the door, flicks the dragon away, and the year ends.
Thank you. I was going to talk about 5 things that I learned at Power Source at the Intelligence Squared IF conference that Rebecca and I went to at the end of last November. It was a 2-day thing, although Rebecca went for 1 day. She's busy. And it was sort of a gathering of 35 speakers and a gathering of all these bright minds of the UK that span sort of a broad range of the humanities, arts, science. And they were there to talk about technology and humanity coming together. And it was pretty impressive. I sort of divided them into 2 groups, the futurists or futurologists, who are just people that just talk about anything they want to. There was one insane man who spoke for 20 minutes on coveting his neighbor's wife and how he wanted to have virtual sex with her. talked about virtual sex. And then there were a lot of people who thought of new things to do and actually built these things. So there were people who built Arctic Explorers, who built eye-controlled wheelchairs, who built 3D printers, and those people sort of impressed me the most because they had the idea and they followed it through. So I'm only going to talk about the one thing that I learned at my adventures at the World Geographical Society. And that thing I took away was about sort of hacking and inventing. And by hacking, I don't really mean, you know, people like Alex sitting in his basement trying to break into the Pentagon, or, you know, sort of where matrixy kind of hacking in that sense. Or the hacking in the sense of we want to break into Hugh Grant's voicemails because there's one super being on some distant planet that actually cares about what sort of beans he bought that evening to throw at photographers. Yeah, I don't really care, but apparently that's important. It's this sort of hacking, the taking or using everyday objects, reusing objects, and then repurposing them for something else. They don't have to be objects, but I'm going to focus on objects for a bit. They could be spaces or environments, as you will see. So, the first thing we should probably get out of the way is the Arduino. You might have heard of those sorts of things. There's one on the floor over there, and which you'll get to use later. And these are sort of, they've been around since 2005. They're an Italian-made chip and board, very simple. It's a microprocessor. The good thing about it is it's very cheap. And there are lots of kinds and varying price ranges and lots of clones. So that one costs about £20. You can get some for £6, £8. And what it allows you to do is to connect things to it, run a bit of code, open source code of course, and get other things to do something else. So you can connect sensors up to that, things that sense light value, temperature, oh, I don't know, different gases in the air. Yes, you can make a fart detector. Motion sensors, and you can output analog and digital data to a website or to a device or make a stuffed toy, walk around the room. So really you're just limited to what you can think of and how much time you want to put into programming these things. This is one example that a chap made. This is called the Like Light. And he used, what did he use? Oops, sorry. Oh yes, Lego has a digital designer app that you can download for free on your desktop. Andy and I tried it out, it's pretty complicated. But you can design a model in Lego, send it back to Lego, and they will send you all the pieces and the instructions for the exact thing you want to build. So he designed this little Facebook thumbs up thing. He got it home and he hooked it up to an Arduino, and every time he gets a like, it lights up. And that's all it does. Which is one of the key things of the Arduino. It usually does one or two things very simply, but it does them very well. And it runs on low voltage, which is pretty important. Another example of hacking stuff is this. This is a map of some Boris bike stations. And this was made by Russell Davies, who's a tech writer. And instead of looking at an app on your phone or just taking a guess, he's hooked this up to an Arduino on the internet, and he puts it by the door of his house. And at a quick glance, he can see if it'll light up if there are 5 or more Boris bikes near to where he lives. So he knows which way to turn when he goes out of the house to get a Boris bike. So that's very specific for him. He saw a need for it, and he uses it, but he wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to make something that the whole world can use, but maybe it is something the whole world can use. You don't have to always talk to the internet. You can make things move. This is a Arduino-powered self-lacing shoe. That's for the Back to the Future fans. This is the sort of what the shoe that Marty McFly was. So this was made by a lady in San Francisco who runs a motel. Her grandmother has Alzheimer's, she has Alzheimer's, and she had trouble doing up her shoes, so she just messed around. She said she spent about 10 hours making this. Right now it's a bit clunky. But if you check out her status on Kickstarter, the sort of you can join up and get funding. She's got about 25 grand worth of funding and has filed a few patents and is now sort of battling Nike to see who's going to come out on top. She looks like Nat, if you want to know. So.
I wonder where she got the money.
Fairly hot. Enough about the Arduino. We'll go to the Kinect. We already saw a nice presentation of the Kinect. This is another use for the Kinect. This is a belt that lets visually impaired people see where they're going. So this is sort of concurrently developed by a bunch of people. Some German people were doing this separately to some American college students, plus one kid who now claims that he invented it, but it doesn't really matter. So what it is you wear a Kinect on this belt, and it has 3 vibrating motors along the belt, and the Kinect sees the room and objects, and it will increase in vibration when you're approaching something. So it will kind of drive you around the room using the vibrating motors on the belt, which is pretty interesting. But I don't know if they tested it with an actually visually impaired person. They seem to just put a shirt over their heads and started walking around. This is something I did at my house last night. So if you don't have any electrical components around and you want to hack something and solve a problem, you can usually find a solution pretty quickly. Note the Tim Hortons mug there, Dave. So this is a tea timer. You can just, you can also make toast while your tea is brewing. So tie a tea bag to the end of a stick and put it down, and obviously when it pumps back up, your tea will be ready, and your toast might be ready at the same time, which is pretty amazing. And you don't have to, you can go outdoors, so hacking of spaces is quite interesting. This is a vertical garden that was made by a chap called, I'm just going to find his name, Patrick Blanc. He's a really strange little French guy with green hair, and he's very passionate about this. And he grows plants on Alex and other Alex and me. And what it does is it uses 3 light sensors on a child's toy. And when you put a ball down and shoot, the ball passes over a light sensor, it detects if something's gone by, and it adds a +1 to that person. And at the end of all the voting, we simply see who's got the most +1s, and something magical will happen. So, whenever you're ready, you can take a ball, go around the back, and put it in the hole that you want.
Can you move the automatic to the right a bit so I can get there?
Yeah, it's possible this might not work.
Well, it doesn't show up on the last
One ball, one vote.
Then we just do one wait for it.
No,
That'll become very boring quite quickly.
Yeah.
I like the privacy
Alright, well, this is the system of the partial chief for the next election. If you buy a partial chief, All of that is It's like that hotel stuff on progress bar that isn't really progress bar. It's the narrative. 90% narrative.
Just being done.
Paul? You directly.
Oh, yes. We'll calculate that. I don't think that's